Napoleon.
You certainly don't look like a blood-crazed revolutionary. The hood is a bit sinister, though, if you don't mind my saying.
Hello, fellow controversy-inflicted gamers, to another tale of pixels, bytes, frame rates and Parisian-style parity. It would not be fitting if this did not involve the most controversial of all publishing houses, let alone development ones. Ubisoft are at it again. As you may know, this week they caused yet another furore when lead producer on the game, Vincent Pontbriand, stated in an interview about AC Unity that, and I quote, "We decided to lock down both versions to the same specs to avoid all the debates and stuff." And just as Iron Man discovered, in trying to rid the world of debates, it's created its biggest one yet. We decided to restrict or hobble the PS4 version because we didn't think it would suit our ends. Now this has obviously created a huge whirlwind yet again in the face of what Ubisoft did with Watch Dogs, and some part of me thinks this is some kind of weird PR process that they've got going on that works so well for their sales of Watch Dogs, they'll do exactly the same thing with AC Unity. Obviously I kid, I don't think even Ubisoft are that crazy, but they certainly need to work out some kind of PR plan in their business because they just seem to be shooting themselves in the foot left, right and centre, which I don't understand, but their PR team must be on suicide watch at this point. All they keep doing is digging a bigger hole. Obviously since this came out they then retracted on that and said he used the wrong wording, and the fact that it's been 4 years in development, they've been working to the same specs across all, and they would not nobble their own vision. But obviously the contradiction in that is, well then surely you would lock down the PC version to the same restrictions because that's what you aim for. The other side of it is they came out and said that 30 is more cinematic, but it is harder to achieve. So it was kind of a 50-50 leaning towards, yes, 60 is nice, but 30 is better, and it's a little bit difficult to achieve. My take on this is the fact that, yes, the CPU limitations in these consoles is the restriction that's going on in a lot of games. It's been seen already in Alien Isolation, it's been seen in Shadow of Mordor. If you saw my technical analysis last week, you can see where the restriction came from that. And I think, yet again, this is another CPU heavy game that is limited by these CPUs in these consoles, simply because they're probably using only the 4 cores properly, which is the evidence I've seen across all the games I've analysed really across PC. Now there's a very good reason for that, and that's simply because the 2 meg cache that's shared across the cores, they're basically 2 CPUs stacked on the chip, 4 core, which gives you your 8. 2 of those cores are allocated to the operating system at this point, along with a big chunk of RAM, which is around 3 gig. If they start swapping data between the 2 cores, i.e. using the full 6, then they've got to work out a much better way to handle the data transfer between the L2 caches on both sides, because they're not coherent across each other simply as they would be within the 4 cores that can share the data. Now I don't want to go into too much detail because I don't think it's going to be of much benefit in this case. Now, going wide is obviously the only way they can do it, and I'm not saying that games aren't using that process now, but they need to offload a lot more work to GPU compute, and that is not going to happen this early in the generation. I don't think Sony and Microsoft have got third-party tools out yet for them to use this process coherently and properly in their development cycle, and this is all part of the API schedules that both of those teams will be working to. Now, this is not to say that first party is not using these. Obviously, we've seen a small example of that with Second Son, which used GPU compute for particles and some facial animation in the game and took away some of the load from the CPU. And you've got the Tomorrow Children, which uses a huge amount of GPU compute, or asynchronous compute, and the example they gave was a 33 millisecond frame rate, which is a 30 frames per second screen, was chopped down to 27 milliseconds, saving them 6 milliseconds in the frame filling in these gaps, using the ACE scheduler to fill the compute queues while the graphics pipeline is still running. This is the beginning of a process and certainly not the be all and end all of what they can achieve. Now this, along with the huge saving they've shown already in GPU compute, also has the stunning cascaded voxel cone tracing system for lighting in the game, fully real-time lighting, along with up to 3 bounce lights, which creates some of the most effective and realistic global illumination seen on any game at this point. And this is something I'll go into more detail on this tech-heavy game later. Now, this is the beginning of GPU compute. Now, you can't offload everything. You can't just say everything that CPU can do, a GPU can do. It doesn't work that way. Physics, collision, cloth simulation, water. The ACE commands on these consoles are going to help because they allow it to handle these queues more effectively per cycle. So they can basically fill in the gaps more efficiently as the GPU is not doing things. So for things like opaque shadows and things like that, where the GPU is not being heavily utilized, they can fill in these spaces of the ALU units and the compute shaders. The downside to this is, like everything, as long as you start using it more, you will see more heat in your consoles. But I'm assuming this is all part of their thermal dissipation plan that they had in these consoles to begin with, and the PS4 is more suited towards GPU compute simply because it's got more ACQs, although saying that the Xbox One is pretty well stacked itself, but it hasn't got as much space to spare on the compute units that the PS4's got. That said, this isn't about sheer power, this is about using that power more efficiently. And once third parties start using this process, the benefits will carry over to PC, albeit most cards not having the amount of ACEQs. Unless you go up to the newer AMD cards, there still is quite a lot of power on tap in PCs, and it will benefit everyone across the board. Now, AC compute is not the be all and end all, and it's certainly not going to answer the questions now. We are looking at CPU limited games, of which Assassin's Creed Unity at 30 FPS, as I predicted, is one of those games. Now, this does not mean the resolution should be equal across both, and that is where the issue lies. It is very rare, and I stress this, very rare, not totally impossible, for the CPU to be limiting the resolution in a game. It can happen in certain instances, but it's very, very rare, like I say. You've only got to look at games over the past few months to see the situation as it transpires. Shadow of Mordor, 900p 30 on Xbox One, 1080 30 on PS4. Metro Redux, 900p 60 on Xbox One, 1080 60 on PS4. And along with those changes, you've got probably more solid frame rate, better quality effect, and LOD in the game. All these things tell me that this game could have easily ran 1080. And this has been compounded by the fact that the latest one to enter the foray is the Dragon's Age dev BioWare have tweeted yesterday that their game runs 1080 on the PS4 and 900p on the Xbox One because they maximise the potential of these consoles at this point. Again, stressing the point of what I've said, where APIs and development and tricks will move on with these console cycles like they always do. And secondly, that they pretty much know that this game has been held back. This has not been held by Microsoft, in my opinion. This has been held back by Ubisoft because it suits their ends. You've only got to look at the sales list for Watch Dogs and see the fact that the PS4 sold nearly twice the amount of units to the Xbox One version. And that simply is because of the resolution difference. Now, whether or not they're going to backtrack on this, because they've already changed their mind and come out now and said that the specs aren't final, and we will see. This tells me we're probably going to see a day one patch of the PS4 version to push it up to 1080 like Assassin's Creed. Now, this is not a single issue linked just to Ubisoft. This has happened everywhere else, and it's not been parity forced on by Microsoft. Again, in my opinion, I don't know like anybody else, but it makes sense to me. EA did it with UFC. They released that game at 900 on both consoles with 4 times MSA anti-aliasing on the PS4 and 2 times MSA anti-aliasing on the Xbox One. There's no way on earth that game could not have been 1080 2 times on PS4. It would have been a better image quality, and it would have been less resource on the system and less bandwidth. It doesn't make sense. The PS4 can nearly push out 100% more pixel fill rate than the Xbox One. That should not be limited by the CPU. You've only got to look at launch games. Call of Duty Ghosts was both reviewed at 720 on both consoles, with a day one patch bumping it up to 1080 on the PS4. That wasn't done by accident, even though they said it was. Assassin's Creed Black Flag had a day one patch to bump it up from 900, which it was on both machines, to 1080. This kind of situation is not new, and it's never been new. The difference here is we are seeing it more common because people are more paranoid about frame rates and resolution. And unfortunately, even though it is important, it will cause a issue, I feel, in the games development situation, where games companies will just be more concentrating on frame rates and resolution than they will on actual games. You've got Naughty Dog making Uncharted 4 at 1080 60, which everyone's doubting, and everyone's still saying it won't happen, and wait and see, and blah blah blah. That is literally because there's so much doubt in people's mind of what is achievable. Dragon's Age devs, for example, BioWare, have come out and said that it's 1080 and 900 on both consoles, but they've still not said the frame rate. Even when they're asked, they will not answer the frame rate. I've seen this game running on Xbox One, or at least I was told it was Xbox One, and it was an unlocked frame rate. It had dips, it wasn't running a solid 60, it was dipping down, so their aim is still get to that 60 frames per second. And because it's a Frostbite engine, that engine is designed for 60 frames, so it would be a shame if that game doesn't achieve it. But as we stand here and now, Assassin's Creed Unity is a game that should be marked on its game merits and merits alone. I'm not giving Ubisoft a free pass here, and certainly anyone else that jumps into this bandwagon, but I wish that that people would stop getting so hung up on resolution, and I wish Ubisoft would learn from their mistakes and just keep stum and make a game and let it sell itself and show it, because the negativity around this game is really a shame, because the game looks amazing. Visually, it is a piece of work and something that everyone should enjoy. Running at 900 or 1080, it makes no difference whatsoever for the actual visual flair and detail on screen. Yes, it's slightly crisper textures, yes, it's slightly less jagged edges, but it's not going to end the world, and people need to put all this stuff behind us. I can see it having massive counterproductive issues on games development over the next few years if these huge issues do not keep popping up with hashtag PS4 Parity on Twitter, causing this public outcry that just makes devs think that's all this is about. And that's why they're all getting so tetchy about actually announcing frame rates and resolution all the time, because the issues just get so blown out of proportion, you lose track of what the game is and what the whole thing's about. Which brings me on to this game, and again we've got the "it's been downgraded" crowd coming out of the woodwork, who are just saying things and not know where to look or what they're even looking for. The other side is people are saying, I'm going to cancel my pre-order now and just put it on Dragon's Age because that's 1080, because that instantly makes that game better over this game based on the fact that it's got a higher resolution. It makes no sense. People judge apples to oranges all the time and say game A should be 1080 because game B is 1080. It makes no sense. I would rather play a great game that's 900p than a crap game that's 1080. That's just my take on it. The other side of it is the downgrade. Where's this downgrade? If we look at the visuals here from the E3 demonstration, we can see the Paris level interiors look absolutely luscious and detailed as we expect them to look. If we jump onto the latest Xbox One footage that was shown the other day from the B-roll, now that pretty much looks identical to me. Aside the lower resolution obviously from the Xbox One footage, it looks the same. There is the same detail in the scenery, the animation is identical on the character movement, the bloom from outside and the lighting, the way your character traverses up the side of the building and animates, the detail on the textures and the view from above is all the same and as per the experience we expected from the E3 demonstration. I'm not even sure what people are looking for now, and I think they're just trying to find something that looks different based on a simple development choice, like there's a pot or a chair that's different from the screen, therefore it's a downgrade, or the character model itself has been less detailed because the cape's not flown as much, or there's not as much objects on him. Well, let's take a look at that. For example, this is the E3 demo as he walks down the corridor, and the cape, the sword and the gun on his back. If we look at the latest Xbox One footage, you can see that actually his cape's more detailed, his hood's more detailed with more intricate sewings on it, and he's carrying a larger arsenal with more weapons. You can see the way that his feet interact with his cape as he runs, it kicks it up in the air. The light reflection is the same, the smoke effects are the same, the characters lying around on the floor and the blood splats on the wall, it all looks identical from the original showing at E3. Even down to the crazy bendy dead leg as the guy lies on the floor. Aside the resolution and frame rate issues that we already know of. What we're really looking at is a game that's pretty much identical to the original showings that we have seen throughout its life cycle. From E3 to Gamescom and now from the review event, this game looks identical. The only thing that has changed is the versions we're seeing running. From the PC version clearly evident at E3 now to the Xbox One version running at the review event, we can see that these frame rate issues are something they desperately need to work on, and most likely one of the reasons for the 2-week delay. You can see where the frame rate dips down into the low 20s when you get long viewing distances, lots of NPCs on screen, and it is standard practice in development to not get to the optimization stage until you've finished all of your content. This is the point where they need to flush out these issues and find out what is causing them, but I imagine the thing that they'll do is cull the amount of LOD drawing on the game. And you can see this already evident in some of the scenes here, where in the background you can see the guy pop into view in the distance shot of the corridor. And this is the same on games like Shadow of Mordor, when you're having a high amount of NPCs on screen. And when it comes to this game, their aim is to have thousands of NPCs on screen. So that is not an easy task. But anyone thinking this game has been downgraded, or it's had a huge step down from the original E3 showing or Gamescom showing, is completely misguided and misinformed. It hasn't. But that said, the frame rate issues are clear, and I would imagine that when the game launches they're probably still going to be present, and if there's not a day one patch it will be very soon thereafter. It just depends on what they can do to minimise the frame chugs that you're clearly seeing. On any shots where it's panning from a sink or where you're high up and you've got long draw distances of the city and the people around, this is where it seems to tank. But it doesn't have to be directly related to NPCs on screen. There's pop-in, there's lag, there's jump-in, there's all these kinds of issues that you get on development, and very much on Ubisoft-style games, but I wouldn't call this a huge reason for concern. I'm sure Ubisoft are going to sort this out this early in the generation. Even if the PS4 version stays at a standard 900p, it's most likely going to have a better, more solid frame rate. And if that is the case, then all PS4 owners should be happy by the fact that you've got a version that has a locked 30. I would imagine from what I've seen from high-end PC versions behind closed doors demonstration, that this is going to run PCs hard, and we are going to be in another realm of poor PC port, oh my god, Ubisoft are crap, and all that kind of stuff. When all is said and done, this is a very powerful and very impressive engine. The lighting in the game again is another step up from previous generations, with the torch here cascading light around and through the hanging sheet and then back over it on the other side of it through the transparency, along with the floor and the face of the character and yourself as you walk past. Again, with a physically based rendering, all light reacts to objects realistically as you would expect, and you can see this as you run through the building into the ambient candlelight on the floor with the wood looking like wood, the beams and the wall with the candlelight flicking through, and then as you jump back outside into the moonlight, the actual haze of the moonlight and the ambient light gives a blue tint to everything in the scene. Objects and people all cast dynamic light, as well as the ambient occlusion and the wood and the brickwork all reflected light accurately, even to the point where you can see inside buildings now with people walking past and guards on patrol. The skyline and the rain and the dynamic weather in this game certainly adds up to a game that I think will be visually impressive no matter which platform you choose to play it on, along with the seamless integration of interior and exterior scenes, and again the seamless flow from cutscene to gameplay and back again. The cinematics are a huge leap from the previous generation, with motion capture now moving to the face. There's still keyframe animations in their hand-drawn stuff, but the actual capture now is far higher and far more advanced. You can see the detail in the scene, the lighting, the subsurface scattering on the skin. You can see as Arno moves towards the candlelight and the shade and the shadows cast realistically across his face and across his skin. The Fresnel work and reflection with the diffuse worked very well to create a very realistic skin shader, which you can see exemplified perfectly here with the Marquis d'Ustade's conversation with Arno. Hopefully I've not bored you too much with this rant. I just felt it was something that I needed to talk about, and people get so carried away with downgrades and looking for things, and I think that even though Ubisoft deserves some of their flack because they create it themselves, they do create some of the best franchises, of which Assassin's Creed is certainly one of the biggest out there. I think a lot of people could just take the time and wait and see what this game comes out. Again, like always, there is no need to buy this on day one. If you are not sure and you don't trust them and you don't want to buy this because you think they're hoodwinking you and they're going to rip you off, then don't buy it. Simply wait for my detailed head-to-head and review of the game across all three when it comes out in November. These games have amazing character development and story, and that's what draws us in. That said, as always, if you enjoyed this or any of my other content, then please subscribe. I appreciate each and every one of you that does. Please hit the like if you enjoyed. Leave your feedback below as always, whatever you're picking this up on, be it PC, PS4 or Xbox One. I'd like to hear your thoughts. How does this affect you? What is your opinion on this? Do you trust them? Are you looking forward to it still? Or have you given up on Assassin's Creed and Ubisoft as a whole, and now you're going to live in a tree or the boonies and never play video games ever again? You guys and girls take care, and I'll see you soon on the next one.
The only one who can save the Brotherhood?
We can, together.
It happens tonight.
Please.
You want to protect me?
I want to help you.
Nicely done, my friend.
If you don't have the stomach for revenge, then I don't need your help.
We've been betrayed from within.
Conspiracy. Intrigue.
I have to do this myself.